On this episode of the 30, we are digging into the space between what we meant to say and how it actually landed. Because if your message doesn't land, it doesn't lead. This is the 30. Thank you for joining us. Let's go. Well, hello there, family. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The 30. I am Patrick. I'm your host. I'm also the managing principal and founder of the Jackman Group LLC, who are the producers of this wonderful episode. Well, this wonderful broadcast. We are episode 248, heading into the big show, episode 250, coming up very soon here in a couple of weeks. So make sure that you are ready to go. We are going to be talking about the show on next week. We're going to give you some more information and as to how you can get involved and what is going to be taking place on episode 250. So make sure that you are here not only for this episode, but you're also with us for next week's episode, and then join us for episode 250. Do me a huge favor, family. Go ahead and like this episode, share it, tell your friends, make sure that you repost it if you're watching from YouTube. Like this episode, subscribe to our channel, and hey, get people involved. Make sure that you are involved. If you have a comment or if you have a question or just want to say hi to me, you can go ahead and drop that in the comments field and I will see it. And then if it's something profound, maybe I'll put it up on the screen for you. But certainly, thank you for being here again on this wonderful week. I hope that your week is off to a great start. Well, we're kind of winding it down now. We are towards the end of the week. So I hope that you had a great week, a successful week, and things are going well on your part. Well, here we go. I have a question for you. I think I've been asking a lot of the questions recently, and I'm getting some responses, and it's also revealing to me after I ask the question, I have to personally come up with a response or an answer. So here's the question. Have you ever had the best intentions, but somehow your message still caused confusion, frustration, or silence? I know I have. See, as leaders, sometimes we assume clarity, but our team members, their experiences may be very different. So we think that it's landed. In essence, what we're saying has not landed. That's the difference between our intent and impact. And that's what we're going to be talking about on this episode of the 30, intent versus impact, bridging the gap in leadership communication. Now, as I mentioned last week on the last episode, as leaders, we've all experienced situations where we walked away from a conversation thinking, well, that went well. And come to find out that it didn't go as well as we think or as well as we thought. It left the other person or our team members even more confused than before, or it left them in a place of total frustration. See, as leaders, what we tend to do is that we judge ourselves personally by our intentions, but our teams experience us by our impact. I'll say that again. We judge ourselves by our intentions. Our team members or those that we're speaking with experience us by our impact. There's a difference between, as you know, there's a big difference between intent and impact. Intent is what we meant, and impact is how the person or persons felt. So there's a gap between the two. When we say something, we intended it to be one way. On the other side, the other party or the receiving party, they felt it in a totally different light. So at times, these two things don't match up. There is a huge gap at times between those two. And we're going to be talking about how do we bridge those gaps? How do we make our intent match closer to our impact? And this is what we'll be discussing on today's episode of the 30. Folks, there are situations where, I'll give you an example. There are situations where we set out to provide feedback to our team members or to someone. But how they felt it, our intent was one way, but how they felt it, the impact was, it felt to them that it was criticism. But we never intended to be criticism. We intended it to be feedback. Or maybe, here's another thing. Maybe we intended to encourage someone, but in essence, it came off a little lukewarm. In essence, it came off as being insincere. Intent versus impact. What we meant and how they felt. See, as leaders, here's the truth. Here's the bottom line truth when it comes to leadership, when it comes to intent versus impact. If people consistently experience our words in a way that doesn't match our intent, we have lots of work to do. If they're seeing a negative impact and we're intended to be positive, and that happens continuously, we have lots of work to do. See, communication isn't just what we say. It's about what the other person walks away with. It's not what we intended. It is about the impact and how they felt. So communication goes two ways. There's always a sender and there's always a receiver. If we are the sender as leaders and our intent is to communicate a positive message, but the receiver, the impact comes across as, and they felt it as a negative, then there's the gap. There's something there that is stopping them or hindering our message from coming through intent versus impact. So that's what we call a gap. And our goal is to close that gap. Most leadership communication miscues, I would say, are not intentional. It's not the intent of the leader to have a negative intent of our communication. But as we know, good intentions don't protect us from bad outcomes or reactions. I'll say that again. Good intent does not protect us from bad outcomes or bad reactions. So what do we do? What is our plan? What do we, in terms of how do we close these gaps? Or why does this happen where our intent doesn't translate into what we think as opposed to impact? Here are some of the reasons why. Sometimes we assume the other person knows our heart. Well, here we go again, Patrick. That word, assume. As we said on the previous episode, assumption is the saboteur of effective leadership. We cannot and should not assume anything. We want to make sure that what we said or what we intend to say is what was heard and received. The other thing, or the other reason why intent doesn't always translate to impact, is that we don't take the time to clarify our message. We don't check in for understanding. We don't check with the other person or persons to ensure that what we said or what we intended to say is what they heard and understood. So we rush through the conversation and not taking time to clarify. The other reason why intent doesn't always translate to impact is that we're focused on delivery of the message as opposed to the emotional impact. I'll say that again. We are focused on the delivery. We're focused on getting the message through. We're focused on telling things. We're focused so much on us, but we're not focused on the other person or persons. We're focused on delivery, not the emotional impact. Here's an example. And I said this earlier, but I'll say it again. We're providing feedback to a team member, and that feedback is meant to help. Feedback generally is meant to improve. It's about improvement. It's about development. That's what feedback does. Not constructive criticism. We call that constructive feedback. But it came across the impact to the other person or persons is that it came across as cold. It came across as we are detached. Remember, our intent is to provide solid feedback to help them, to help the person or persons. But the impact on them is cold, detached. The person now, the impact is that the person shuts down. And we're thinking, what happens? What happened? Why did they shut down? I provided solid, constructive feedback in an effort to try to help them to improve. But again, intent didn't translate to impact. So let's break down three. I'm going to give you three core reasons why the gap between intent and impact exists. Or should I say persists. Where leaders, sometimes as leaders, we struggle with impact. So let's tear this apart and rebuild it. Here are the reasons why that gap is there. Number one, there's a lack of emotional intelligence. And you've probably heard a lot about this, right? Emotional intelligence. And we, in our upcoming leadership series, we're going to do a piece on emotional intelligence. Actually, in our Impact Leaders leadership training, our summer program, part of that one module deals with emotional intelligence. And I hope that you are getting ready to sign up for this summer program, because I'm telling you, the 5 weeks that we're going to spend with you is our intent to provide information, not just information, to provide you with the skills, to provide you with the knowledge, to provide you with everything that we have. That's our intent. And we hope that the impact that you receive is to take you from where you are to where you desire to be and where you should be, right? So that's Impact Leaders Leadership Training. And that's our summer program. That is going to start June 3rd through July 1st. If you are in the Rochester area, Monroe County, if you are in Syracuse, if you're in Buffalo, it's an in-person experience. You don't want to miss that. I'll give you a link towards the end of the show where you can get more information and register. So let's go back to the 3 core reasons why the gap exists between intent and impact. So we talked about first one, the lack of emotional intelligence. See, leaders forget to read the room. We forget because we're focused so much on us as opposed to focusing on the other person or persons. We don't understand how our message might feel. We don't understand the impact of our messaging. So there's a lack of emotional intelligence on our part, a lack of empathy on our part. So the gap is still there. The other reason, the second reason why the gap between intent and impact exists is because we continue to assume instead of asking. We assume that something is happening as opposed to asking the questions. So we assume that I thought you knew what I meant, as opposed to asking the questions to get the answers. Do they know or don't they know? So when we assume as leaders, we know in terms of asking this question, I thought you knew what I meant. That's a dangerous question. That's a dangerous way to just leave the person. You never assume. You ask the right types of questions so that you get the right types of answers. You get clarification as to whether or not what you said, your intent, landed with the impact. The third core reason as to why the gap exists between intent and impact is that we neglect to solicit feedback. We never check for understanding. As a result, we miss the opportunity to correct or clarify. So, these are the 3 core reasons why the gap exists. We cannot assume. We cannot think the person knows what we meant, right? And we certainly should not move forward without checking in for understanding. Not hearing, checking in for understanding. Because we don't listen to hear, we listen to understand. So, folks, how do we bridge the gap? How do we bridge the gap between these 2 areas? Between intent and impact. So, let's take a step, and I'm going to walk you through. Let's see, 4 specific ways. I'm going to walk you through 4 specific ways as to how you can bridge that gap. Number 1, and I just said it, you ask clarifying questions. You don't assume. Here's an example. For clarity, so if I am the leader and I'm asking, I'm speaking to my team, if I'm the sender and you're the receiver, I want to make sure that what I said, what I intend to say, is what they heard and what they understood. So I'm going to ask clarifying questions to get the response that, yes, they understood. So here's one for you. Here's an example. For clarity, can you summarize what you just heard me say? for clarity, can you summarize what you heard me say? So I'm asking them, right, what they heard and what they understood, not what I thought they heard. And then I'm going to follow up and says, how did that land with you? What were your thoughts? My goal is clarity. My goal is to bridge the gap. So don't assume anything. Confirm your intent, and what you said is what was heard and received. Here's the second one as to how to bridge that gap. Listen to the response, not just the words. Wow, that is powerful. That's a good one. Listen to the response, not just the verbal response, but the body language. Not just what was said, but you need to look at the body language, verbal and nonverbal. Because sometimes the verbal and nonverbal don't match up. So we're not telling you to be communication geniuses or be experts. All we are saying to here is a second one, listen to the response, not just the words. Focus on the body language, focus on the tone and how it was said. They all send messages. They all speak to us. This means you will have the person and give them the opportunity to speak. So you will capture the essence of the communication in the response. But as leaders, what we have to do, again, step away from the thought that it's all about us and we have all the answers. Step away from that. As we ask the question, we have to give the person or persons the opportunity to speak. It's not always about us, folks. It's never about us when it comes to others, leading teams. It's about the team that you are entrusted to lead, that you are blessed to lead, that you have the privilege to lead. So we have to step away from ourselves and focus on others. Listen to the response, not just their words. Here's the third way as to how we can bridge that gap. Reflect on our delivery. Think about, did my tone match my intent? Was I rushed? Was I distracted? Or did I come across as being disconnected, cold, and calculated? Did my tone match my intent? And that's self-reflection. You can also solicit feedback from others, which goes into the fourth way we can bridge the gap between intent and impact. Invite safe feedback. Invite feedback from others. Say, I want to make sure that what I'm saying is helpful. If something feels off, if you think that I'm not connecting, if you think that I'm off, let me know. If I come across as cold and calculated, if I come across as harsh, let me know. Provide feedback. Ask for feedback, folks. We like to say feedback is a gift, and we all like gifts. So don't look at it as criticism. Look at it as feedback. So I hope this was helpful, right? The bottom line here is this. Leadership isn't just what you say. It's how those that you are speaking with experience what you said. So you don't need to be perfect. But what you need to do is to be present, aware, and willing to adjust, willing to pivot. See, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. So this week, I'm going to throw you a challenge. In addition to signing up and registering for or summer program impact leaders, leadership training, or in-person dynamic training to help you to become a more effective leader. In addition to doing that, here's what I want you to do. Here's a challenge. I want you to practice asking more clarifying questions. Open-ended, not closed, open-ended. Because open-ended questions gets more answers or responses. I want you to pay attention to your body language and your tone. Are you coming across in a tone that is threatening? Is your tone harsh? See, sometimes we say things we don't understand how we're coming across. Solicit feedback. That's the other one. Solicit feedback. So ask more clarifying questions, open-ended. Pay attention to your body language and tone, and solicit feedback. Leadership that bridges intent and impact builds teams that thrive. I'll say that again. Leadership that bridges intent and impact builds teams that thrive. So I'll leave you with that one. I want to thank you for joining me on this episode 248. And this is where we talked about intent versus impact, bridging the gap in leadership communication. Thank you for being here. Let's see what comments. Shout out to Alfreda. Thank you for being here as always. She says it's all about the delivery intent as leaders. Awesome. Great. Thank you, Alfreda. If you would like to be part of our upcoming 250th episode, do me a huge favor. Send me an email. I would love to have you to be part of this program, this milestone, 250 episodes. I'm going to give you, let me see here. You can send me nope, not that one. Let me give you my email information, our email information. You can send your name and email address to us at info@jackmangroupllc.com. That's info@jackmangroupllc.com. If you would like to be part of our 250th episode, we would love for you to be in studio with us virtually, of course, not in person, but our virtual studio, and be part of our upcoming episode. Love to have you. info@jackmangroupllc.com. If you would like to register for the first part of our Impact Leaders Summer Training Program, I am going to drop that link. That is our Impact Leaders Leadership 5-week program that will begin on June the 3rd and goes through till July 1st. That will be an in-person experience. We're also going to have a couple of virtual experiences coming up, different events for the summer. So stay tuned. But our first one is going to be our Impact Leaders Leadership Training. 5 weeks, folks. So look in the description of this episode and look around, because we are going to be dropping the link and dropping more information on my personal LinkedIn page, on the Jackman Group LinkedIn page, as well as Facebook and Instagram. So you can be part of the 5-week program that we will have. All right. I think that's about it. I don't have anything else to cover at this point. Thank you again. Thank you again for joining me on this episode. Until next time, stay focused, stay faithful, and lead well. May God bless you and your family. We will see you soon.